Hello and welcome to Aquarium Dilemmas. I'm your host, Science Gal Aquatics. I'm Carrie, and this is my co-host,
Jesse, and welcome.
Welcome to this week's episode. And again, I've been thinking about it all week, and we're going to surprise Jesse along with you. What did I come up with? And I think this week we should talk about signs that you should do a water change, because sometimes in the past I did this without knowing why, and now I feel like I've got a pretty good routine down. So before I just didn't know when or why, or I just did it because my dad told me to. So yeah. So what do you think about that topic?
I think it's awesome because technically trying to always schedule a water change is, in my opinion, not the right way to go.
Well, I feel like people that schedule water changes kind of like, I'm going to do it this time on this day. You've probably been keeping tanks for a while. And I feel like a good rule of thumb is if you feel like you need to do a water change, chances are do a water change because they ain't going to hurt anything.
No, it won't hurt anything. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it also depends size of the tank. It depends on planted, not planted.
Well, yeah.
What's your substrate? I mean, there's a bunch of factors that go into this, which goes back to what I've always said. There's really no right or wrong way because there's too many variables.
Well, yes. This hobby, and that's what makes it fun. Sometimes I like a good challenge. Sometimes a good challenge pisses me off. But when I first started keeping fish tanks, for those of you who've listened and know me for a while, you probably know this story. You've heard it for a while. But I started in this hobby because of my dad. I kept a fish tank my whole life because of my dad. He took us to the fish store and told us to pick out whatever we wanted that we liked. So we have a 30-gallon in the living room, and I still have it in the fish room today, but we had a concoction of fish, and he always told me to take an inch of water out once a week, and that's what I always did. I had a concoction of fish in my one fish tank, and I did a 1-inch water change with my bucket or my drinking, like those 1-gallon drinking water tubs, containers, like. But now, like, I do schedule, I try to do that once every couple of weeks in the fish room. And like Jesse said, there's a lot of different factors. When I grew up, we didn't have so much the neon gravel in the living room tank. Later on, when I was allowed to keep tanks in my room, I did. But we definitely had, like, the pebbly stones. We had fake plants, and I can see it in my head. I'm not going to describe it very well, but we had like a lava rock stack in the middle, and we did have an aquarium vac I remember using, but I don't remember how we filled it back up. I know we used water straight out of the tap to fill it back up, and I feel like we used water conditioner back then, but I can't remember. But I had no idea why. Like, I just assumed it was for the benefit of the fish, but I really didn't know why. But there's so many factors that benefit from water changes. You can reoxygenate the water. You can, basically anytime you see a problem, start with a water change. And anytime you feel like you need to do a water change, do a water change. And if you are bored on a Saturday and you have nothing to do a water change.
Yes. I mean, it's never going to hurt anything if you're not doing a mass water change.
And there's sometimes, yes, you can do a large, if there's a problem you're trying to get ahead of. But generally speaking, like,
I'm talking like a 90%. I'm talking like a mass
that's what I'm
change.
saying. Like, there are occasions where if you want to get ahead, if you're seeing a problem, there's been times where we've done large water changes. But for your like every week, every bi-weekly, once a month in a planted tank, or like your average water change, we come down here and I probably do 20 to 30% of whatever tank I'm working on. Whether it's a 10-gallon or a 55-gallon, I usually stick between 20 and 30%. Sometimes I might do 50 if I'm talking and I get distracted, but there's nothing wrong. You're never going to hurt anything by doing
well, and with
water
our
change.
setup, the way that you're running your tanks, you're not, because this is just our setup, and I'm going to explain it that way. With our setup and the substrate that's in there and the plants, all that extra bacteria and stuff is still stuck on those plants. So by changing that water out, we're just taking the waste and stuff. We're not really losing the good beneficial bacteria.
No.
Because it's still stuck to everything in there. Now, if you're running a bare bottom tank and stuff like that, you're going to get into a little bit different set of rules, really. Not rules, but guidelines, I should say.
Well,
because everything in the fish hobby, it's not a rule. It's a guideline.
With my bare bottom tanks, I usually use them as breeder tanks or a hospital tank. So those I naturally do more of a significant water change more often. But on my, let's say you have just one living room tank with community fish in it, and you don't have a setup like we do, and you just have gravel in there, and maybe it's planted, maybe it's not. You need to probably look more at the bioload of your fish to kind of guesstimate when you need to do it. If you have like a pleco and goldfish, you're going to have more of a bioload, so you're going to have to do water changes more often than if you have a planted tank with guppies and smaller bioload fish that just go to the bathroom more. And again, if you feed them more often, you go to the bathroom more, so you'll have to do water changes. But outside the, like, if my tank's running perfectly, I don't see any problems at all, I do probably do a 20 to 30% water change every 2 weeks on my tanks. And I think that would be a good rule of thumb to go by.
Well, it's a good guideline. Like I said, the whole fish hobby is built on, in my opinion, it's built on guidelines.
But yes, but if I'm how do I want to say this? If something's up and I'm looking at my tank and I'm kind of like noticing something's up, it's usually a behavioral change in the fish you're keeping. And one things I see most common with the fish that I keep, that I notice something's kind of up, is if they're at the surface kind of clasping or gasping for air, their fins are kind of clamped to their body. That's a usually telltale sign. And the first thing I go to, something's up in my tank, and the first thing I go to is a water change. And that usually kind of solves it. The next thing I might do is add an air stone. But just talking about water changes, that's something I would see is a behavior change that's like, that kind of sparks my like, something's not quite. And I would do a water change first. And then if that doesn't fix it, I'll go into testing my water. But just a sign that you might do a water change, something might be up, is your fish are up at the top, like gasping, or their fins are clamped. Well, I would say just some kind of behavior change.
Yeah, it could be very small too. If you're, again, it goes back to the guideline thing. If you have fish that normally stay in the bottom end of the tank, and that's where they school, whatever you want to call it, and that's where you watch them every day. You got one or two tanks,
kind of in the mid-level,
and you watch them in that mid-range level, and then all of a sudden they're all up near the top. Well, hold it. They haven't been doing that previously, so why are they doing it now?
Or like you have, I don't know, it's always escapes me when we're trying to record this, but a faster moving fish that all of a sudden is kind of lethargic and laying on something that it might be normal behavior for some fish, but your fish something's just not right. That would be my first go-to thing, would be a water change.
Well, and that's why I say guidelines, and that's why I say, like, our particular setup with the planted tanks, the bio load on most of our tanks is quite low.
Yeah.
And it's actually helping the plants. The little bit of bio load that is in there is actually beneficial to the plants. Whereas if we didn't have that, then you would look at doing a water change more timely or differently, because you're trying to get rid of that stuff. You're trying to get rid of that bacteria, that ammonia. You're trying to get rid of all that.
Yeah, and I would say for me, I don't run into this problem as often as I used to, being new to the hobby when I was younger. But if I'm going to see this now, it's usually, off the top of my head, thinking about it, is a newer established tank. And maybe you'll talk about one side of the coin and I'll flip it and talk about the other. You'll talk about fish room stuff and I'll talk about like one tank things. But
well, I think with a newer established tank, you're going to have those fluctuations because you're trying to build up that good bacteria.
Yeah.
And whether you're doing it how we do it, with adding stuff into the filter, changing all that out, not
the biomedia,
putting the biomedia in,
things
taking
that
out all those
bacteria,
cartridges, more room for that good bacteria to stick to, which is how we do it. But it doesn't mean you have to do it that way, but that's how we do it.
Just thinking about times off the top of my head of time that I've run into like gasping fish. It was definitely in a newer setup tank, when fish are a little bit stressed out, if we're traveling and they've been in the fish bag for a little while. But every once in a while, you might have a tank crash. Maybe like you said, we've had a tank set up for a really long time.
And then crash the other way.
It might have a pH crash or an ammonia spike because I missed something, passed away in the tank that I really didn't see because it's in with plants or something like that. Just a fluctuation in your nitrogen cycle, whether it's old tank syndrome or new tank syndrome or just something abnormal. If you have a fluctuation in that cycle, chances are it's going to come out in a behavior change in your fish. So whether it's a lack of oxygen or a crash or a fluctuation, I think it still kind of circles back around. The first way you're going to see it is behavior changes in your fish, and that comes with experience. The longer you're in the hobby, the more times you keep a particular fish, you're going to get to know your fish better, and you're going to notice those minute behavior changes, or a clasp fin a little bit faster and be like, oh, I'm going to do a water change real quick, and then observe and take it from there. But fluctuations, you can't see that with your naked eye. Obviously, you're going to have to do and in the beginning of keeping a tank, you're probably, I know I'm guilty of it, I just don't test as often as I used to. When I set up a newer tank, I'm more apt to test, but most of that, since you can't see it, it goes into observing your fish and knowing that behavior. But again, the first thing I do when something's up is a water change.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, number one, that's the go-to anyway, because if there's anything going on, it's going obviously it's a glass box. It's going to be water related. It's not, I mean, whether it be from a bacteria, whether it be from ammonia, whatever the case may be, it's in the water. It's in the water column most of the time. Yeah. Somehow it is present in the water. So to reduce that amount of presence, you have to do a water change. There's no other way around it. Yeah.
And this kind of goes into another thing that I don't see it often, but it happens just enough that I have had it happen, that the first thing I go to is what you've kind of said a few times, is a bacterial bloom, or if I encounter green water or dark water. Now, obviously, a bacterial bloom or an ammonia spike and things like that can be very harmful, if not deadly to your aquarium. But green water and tannins or dark water tanks aren't necessarily bad for your fish. It's just up to you if you want to keep that. I prefer having my green water tanks outside for my summer tumbing and my like breeding projects outside when it's hotter. I don't necessarily like the look of green water in the fish room, but it can be beneficial for baby fry of a certain time. And same with
tannins.
Same with black water tanks and tannins from like leaf litter or driftwood that leaching into your water. I honestly kind of like a dark water tank, and I find it's got some you're going to have to say that word, antibacterial properties that are really...
It's basically antibiotics for fish.
And it's when I've had like dirted tanks in the past and they were really heavily dark, the plants, even though you really couldn't see them, they grew really well. But on the opposite end, if you don't like that, you're going to have to up your water changes a little bit more until that kind of does leach out of the driftwood. And usually green water for me happens when I'm overfeeding and I leave the lights on too long and there's some algae in there. It can get in your substrate a little bit and it can cause green water. But if you don't like the look of it, you don't like the look of it. And you just going to have to up your water changes. And a bacteria bloom, it's going to look like you have like spilled milk. It's going to be really white and cloudy. And that's usually I'll get if I leave my lights on too long and something's passed away in the tank and I just honestly didn't see it. And so I just turn off the tank or the lights for a while and I'll up my water changes. But that's definitely something that I don't have it happen often unless I'm purposely trying to get green water, like I said, outside. But I have encountered it from time to time. And the first thing I really do go to is water changes.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, the water change, number one, right out of the gate. If you suspect anything going wrong, then, yeah, start out with whatever, a medium-sized water change, whether it be 10%, 20%, depending on the size of the tank, obviously, because 10% on a 100-gallon tank, you know.
Yeah, and on these occasions where I run into like a bacteria bloom or my fish are gasping or I have a crash or a spike, this is the occasion where I will do more of a 50% to a 90% water change. But if I'm just talking about my every 2 weeks schedule that I like, or if you like once a week, or if you have a larger tank and it's really plain and you do once a month, that I usually do 20 to 30%. But with experience and time, you'll find what works for you and what works for you. Some fish really like cold water changes, and you do them often and you'll get them breeding like crazy. Some fish don't like cold water at all, and you'll really piss them off. So you'll find your way. But the next thing is if we come down here and something smells like overly earthy and just smells like a fish tank, like fish tanks shouldn't stink. And I've heard that before, like, well, I don't want to keep fish because it just smells bad. Well, we have like 30 down here in this room, and you can't smell fish tank. You might smell cat, but you're not going to smell fish tank.
You're going to smell cat and hear water.
Yeah. If it has that earthy smell, chances are you have more of a blue-green algae somewhere in your tank, and you're going to want to get that out, remove it, then do some water changes. But if my tank's not smelling right, and it's just... it still has an earthly smell to it. It is a fish tank, and we got dirt, sand, and rocks. But
I know
that
the smell
really
you're talking about.
Pungent, earthy, like you come down the steps and you're like, you can smell it before, or if a fish passes away, the first thing I do is a heavy water change if I've missed it. Or something like that. It doesn't happen very often, honestly, because I like to say I've grown as a fish keeper, and I'm
But that's
better.
more of when it gets that pungent smell, that you're borderline
Chances
on
are-
ammonia at that point.
Well, not. I mean, you can be, but for me personally, mine, when I have that problem, it's usually when I'm using a shop light and I've left it on. We've gone somewhere for a few days and I've left it on and I've come back. I usually have it more of the shop lights, and I have some blue-green algae in there, and that's usually, or every once in a while, like I think it's more on the filter upstairs, that canister filter. We don't do, like, we do the maintenance really well for a while, and then something will happen and we'll slack. And when you open up that filter, sometimes you're like, yeah, this definitely needs to be rinsed out. It's just, if something's smelling bad is my point. If just overall something's smelling bad, do a water change.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, just anything. I'm trying to think. Is there any times that you can think of off the top of your head, since you say I talk too much?
The most massive water change I've ever done is when I came back to my wonderful prize arowana
Yeah.
being
We just cleared that
floating.
out.
that was a horrible day for me, and the fact that then I was going, well, this entire 180 gallons has got to come out of here.
Yeah, and we were so mad. We drained it, cleaned it, and left it airing out for a couple months, I would say, before we were ready to even think about anything else to go in that tank. But yeah, times that you just need to do a water change. I would say behavior changes. Anytime you have some kind of bacteria bloom, green water if you want to, tannins if you want to, smelling bad, crashes.
Yeah, crashes, smelling bad.
I will have to say, kind of on this topic, I don't usually top off. I'm not usually one that does top off. I know some people, and I say top off is like you'll just add water to your tank. You won't remove any water first, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, when your water evaporates, the minerals and things don't evaporate with the water. So in that occasion, because I do have some heaters in the tank, and when I add the heaters in the tank, it makes the water evaporate faster. So in that case, I will remove, even if it's just a little bit, like 1 5-gallon bucket worth, I will remove a little bit of water out of the tank first, and then I'll go ahead and add all the water I want back to the tank. But I know a lot of people like topping off. Some people hate topping off. Some people use a combination of both. It's just, I would say if you've topped off for a while over and over and over again, chances are do a water change and then go back to whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Just take a little bit out first and then add to it.
No, I can 100% agree to that, because that really actually, in my mind, comes down to what's your water like? Are you using an RO system and then you're adding stuff to the water? Or if you're running off a well, then you could have tons of minerals already in your water. I mean, so to me, the topping off method could work for a while, but at the same time, it could cause you ultimately in the long run, and I mean over a very long span of time.
Just might cause some problems. Your snails might enjoy it if you have hard water.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because you're changing, like you said, when that water evaporates, the minerals and all the other stuff are still there.
Yeah. And in my head, the first thing I go to is, on this occasion, and this can go to this topic at hand, is if you're using a salt to medicate or some kind of medicine, you need to adhere to the directions of the water changes of some of those medicines are pretty strict. Salt, I usually just, anytime I need to add more salt, I take some water out. So this is a big one for me when it comes to treating fish. For some reason, I definitely don't top off then. But when I was younger, I did this all the time. I never took water out of that tank. I let it evaporate down till it was halfway out of water. I mean, it was already 50% changed and evaporated out. See? It was so evaporated out. It was like hard and crusty from the calcium. I mean, so in my head, that was the water change. I just added more water. And like you said, like Jesse said, that can work for a while until it don't work for a while. It can cause you some problems in the long run. So just if you're running heaters, you leave your lights on too long, your house is really warm, whatever it may be, and you do have more water evaporate out, just take a little bit out first, add a whole bunch more in.
Well, it's one of those deals where I'm not going to say common sense, but it is at the same time. Okay, what's your water like when you take a shower, your bathroom? Do you get build up on your shower door? So do you have a little bit more calcium in your water? Or do you run a water softener? So you got softer water because you use a water softener. I'm not going to call it common sense, but a little bit of thought into it of like, well, it's the same water I'm using on myself, on my body, and it's the same water I may or may not be drinking out of the tap. So, and is that the water that you're putting in your fish aquarium? And if it is, then think about it that way. That's where I come at it from.
Yeah. Well, I had thought about something, then you said something. I don't remember.
But I mean that's the way I look at it, because I know for us we just generally have harder water here in Missouri.
Yeah, that's what you jog my memory. That I think honestly, like, we could go longer in between water changes than we do, because like I've said numerous times, we keep low bioload fish. They're guppies, mainly shrimp, and they're heavily planted. But one of the factors that make me do water changes sometimes like weekly on extreme, I'm feeling really responsible and mature. And 2 weeks, I'm feeling a little lazy, but I know I need to get my stuff done, is we do have really hard water where we live. And I don't like when it bubbles and then you get that calcium lime scale, that buildup. So I do spend a lot of time getting that all off because I just don't like the look of that. But that is one of the factors that make me do a water change bi-weekly and more often, even though what we keep, it could 100% go longer in between and everything would be A-okay. But that is one of the factors, is we do have liquid rock water that anytime it splashes on anything, you're going to have a water spot and you're going to have to scrub it off. And if you've listened this far into the episode, bonus tip, we use a lot of white distilled vinegar and razor blades to get that off. But we'll talk about that in a different episode. Kind of, I guess, on the tail end of my list is, it's just been a while. You haven't done a water change in a while, and you're like, I haven't done a water change in a while. Maybe I should do a water change? Do a water change. But in that occasion, if it has been a while, like a while, 6 months, 4 months, start off small, because you don't want to shock the system. And this is probably a topic we'll get in further down the line in time too. But on that occasion, start off like 20% and do them a little bit more often, not just a whole bunch at once, if it has been a significant time. But if you have the thought, when's the last time I've done a water change? Chances are do a water change. It'll be a good idea.
Well, and again, if you don't have a lot of time, I would recommend just small, you said it, Carrie, small water change more often, just a little bit more often. And then it's not going to take you as long. You're not going to feel rushed. Just do a little bit, whether it be whatever 2.5 gallons or something, or you just
there's not as much to do when I do it more often on a responsible basis than when I do fill down in the dumps. And
you're not going to feel like you're having to clean all the glass. You're having to look at all this. Just take a little bit out, put a little new in. That's all you really have to do, and it'll be quick. It'll be fast. You'll feel like you accomplished something, and at the same time, you're really helping your aquarium, and it doesn't know any difference.
Yeah.
And your fish will obviously, if they don't notice the difference, then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And again, there's only a couple things left that I could think of. So if there's something else, let me know if it pops in your brain. But if this is kind of occasionally you might have one of those moments in the fish room or feeding your aquarium where the lid accidentally pops off and you dump a bunch of whatever in your tank, or you accidentally just overfeed that particular day. But a sign to do a water change is any type of overfeeding, accidental, intentional, but you do not want that to sit in your substrate and rot, and it's not good at all. So anytime too much food or too much anything that's not supposed to be in your tank gets in your tank, get it out, do a water change.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that you're talking bacteria out the woo.
And anytime I medicate, anytime I see clear poop, anytime I see some kind of illness, funk, it kind of wraps up again with behavior changes, kind of goes in that a little bit. But just anything like that, I'll do extra water changes until I can resolve the issue. But with medication, I've used a couple different types over the years of keeping fish, and it seems like they have a pretty, like, dose this, do a water change, dose this, do a water change. So if you see that in the instructions,
they
make
have
sure you
stringent
do that. Yeah.
recommendations that should be followed because of the use of the medication and the way the fish takes it in.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily always, I do have a few medications I like when I see clear poop in fish. In my head, it's just automatically some kind of parasite that I don't want. So I do water changes with the aquarium vac when I see that, but that I'll do water changes. That was one I thought of. That's like maybe you haven't thought of, or you're new and you haven't encountered it yet, but that's definitely one. And then the last one I could think of, assigned to do a water change that we've encountered, and you're going to be like, oh yeah, I thought you would bring this up, is if you lose electricity for a significant amount of time, whether it's due to a tornado, a thunderstorm, or whatever reason it may be. If it's just
I didn't think about that one because that one
we blocked it out.
No, in that one in my mind, it was because I forgot, because we do all the biomedia in the filters. When the electricity is off,
and I'm talking like if it's just been a little bit, an hour, or
in our case, it was a week.
Yes. I'm talking about a significant amount of time, a couple of days or longer. Like an hour or two, you'll probably be fine. But when your electricity goes off for a long time, all that bacteria that you've so lovely built up and all that biomedia Jesse keeps bringing up, because we worked hard to get that all built up and cycled, but that will die. And it goes right into your tank, and it will definitely cause a spike that you don't want. So in that occasion, I will plug in my filter. From now on, I will plug in my filters and then get all that rinsed out the best you can beforehand, I guess. That would be a wise idea. Plug it back in, let it run for like a minute or two, and then do a water change. However, just make sure your filter's still working. I'm always scared my filter's not going to work when I go. But get the biomedia out, rinse it in, not tap water, just the tank water will work in a 5-gallon bucket. Put it back in your filter, turn it on, test it out.
At that point, I will say rinse it in anything at that point, because we just didn't think of it. We were just so happy to have electricity. Mm-hmm. I will say at that point, I don't care if you rinse it in rainwater.
Ideally, we're talking ideally, but just don't let that dead bacteria in your tank. Rinse it out, get it out, then let it build back up. Luckily, we still had enough good bacteria in the tank from being on the glass and all that it was still, but I was like,
but we had to do rapid water changes because when it finally hit us,
we
were
did.
like, uh-oh.
We did lose a few things, and that's what I chalked it up to. So,
there's no chalking it up to it. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. We were so happy to have electricity.
Yeah, I was just so happy.
That we went brain numb and went, hold it. Mm-hmm. We made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to admit I made a mistake. I'm human. I made a mistake. I did not even think of it. I did not even think of it in that way until we started talking about it. And I was like, oh no, you're right. There was no water circulation. Oh no.
Yeah. But I thought this would be a good topic to kind of discuss today. It was just overall signs on when you should do a water change. Because in the beginning, it can be a little overwhelming to be like, well, I know I'm supposed to do this, but like, what am I supposed to look for to know when to do it? And so here's a few things to look for to know when to do water changes that I thought were a good idea to discuss. But doing a water change is just never a bad idea. Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, depending on the tank.
All depends on the size of the tank.
All
There's
dependent.
No guideline.
Yeah. But
no
if you're looking
rule.
for like a check-off list, I thought this was a good way to discuss it. Just things to kind of look for a little bit.
I think so too.
So hopefully this didn't confuse you more and you learned something. If you want to add to the discussion, feel free to leave a comment or review and let us know what you think. We would really appreciate it. So I like to talk, but I'm not good at all the likes, shares, comments. So just join the conversation however you would want to, and I would appreciate it because it makes it more fun when we know if we're on the right track. But thank you so much for listening, and we always invite you to go check out sciencegalaquatics.com to go check out the plushies if you want something that's super cute to look next to your fish tank.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're so adorable. So again, go check out sciencegalaquatics.com, and I will think about a topic for next week. And we look forward to...
You can come back and listen to all my mistakes.
Yeah, he makes a lot. No, I'm joking. I do too. But we're glad you're here, and we look forward to being with you in the next one. So thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.